My name is Sheena Ravenscroft, 32 years old. The night I realized something in my marriage had shifted, the kitchen felt like a museum of our old life. Clean counters, a fruit bowl no one touched, two wine glasses drying upside down like props from a play that had closed months ago. Declan wandered through that space with the careful silence of a courteous stranger. He used to come up behind me and pin my waist to the counter with a grin, whisper some ridiculous joke against my neck until I laughed and told him to stop because the pasta would overcook. Now he drifted past me without a glance, checking the notifications that lit his phone with a pale, private glow. At first, I told myself to be reasonable. His architecture firm had landed a new commercial project, the biggest since he made partner. Of course he was distracted. Of course he stayed late. Of course his brain was a chessboard and the pieces were deadlines, permits, difficult clients. But explanations that look sensible under kitchen lights can rot in the dark. The spaces between us, between his shoulder and my reaching hand, his side of the bed and mine, stretched so quietly that I started to question whether the distance was real or if I'd invented it because my reflection had looked too tired in the bathroom mirror that morning. The phone became a third person in our house. Dinner would be quiet, forks, water, my attempts at conversation drifting like paper boats across a still lake. Then his screen would glow, buzz, buzz, and Declan's whole face would unspool into a smile I hadn't seen in months. He'd angle the device away, thumbs moving quick and nimble as a piano player's, the way he used to touch me. "Client," he'd murmur if I asked. "Morrison account." Later, after I'd stacked plates and wiped sauce from the stove, I'd find him standing in the hallway, not moving, reading. I tried to be the kind of wife who didn't hover. I gave him space. I bought his favorite espresso beans and teased him about his ridiculous loyalty to a brand of mechanical pencil they probably stopped manufacturing before we met. He nodded. He smiled. He slept with his back to me. Around this time, my mother started appearing like a ritual. Victoria never used the front door without looking camera ready. She was 52, going on invincible, the kind of elegant that turned heads in a grocery store and made maitre d's stand a little taller. She'd show up with a casserole, mushroom lasagna or coq au vin, the sort of thing you don't make unless you plan to be remembered, and say, "I was in the neighborhood, darling." Our neighborhood was 30 minutes from hers, but I didn't care. My father had died 4 years ago, and my mother had a way of rearranging a room so it felt warmer, even when she was the only heat source in it. At first, her visits were a relief. I made tea, and she asked about my job at the publishing house, leaning in with that intense mother-love attention that makes you say more than you'd planned. I told her the truth. Things felt off with Declan. The touches had vanished. The laughter had gone thin. "Men go through cycles," she said, tapping my hand like a pretty metronome. "Let gravity do its work, sweetheart. The orbit comes back around." She kissed my hair, then drifted toward the living room as Declan came in and the air changed. I watched her the way you watch weather on the horizon, the way her laugh brightened when Declan said something, even nothing, the way her palm skimmed her blowout, smoothing non-existent flyaways, the way Declan's greeting hug lingered half a beat too long, not wrong, not obviously wrong, just enough to sting the edges of my perception. It's amazing what you can talk yourself out of when the alternative would break your life in half. One evening, I came in from the patio with the empty salad bowl and found them sharing a joke too small for three. She threw her head back. He touched her elbow. Silence rushed in when I set the bowl down. "Your mother's here again," Declan said later. He sounded pleased, not put upon. "Is that a problem?" I asked lightly. "No," he said, smiling in a distant way that didn't include me. "Victoria's great company." He said her name like it tasted good. I blamed myself for a while. Maybe I had been too focused on work, too quick with criticism, too slow to follow when he wanted to talk shop, too tired to do more than rub his shoulders and fall asleep. I turned myself into a science project. Better dinners, fewer comments about shoes left where they could maim me in the dark. A new silk nightgown in a color a saleswoman promised would make me feel dangerous and effortless. He noticed. He said, "You look nice," the way people compliment weather. It got stranger in small ways. The scent of perfume, expensive, floral, familiar, lingered in the hallway long after my mother had left. A lipstick smudge on a drinking glass that wasn't one of mine. A stack of plates slightly off-center, like someone had moved them and forgot to pretend they hadn't. I told myself I was being paranoid. The word paranoid became the whisper inside my pillow. Anita, my best friend since university, invited me to lunch and pushed a bowl of olives toward me until I spoke. "Nothing dramatic," I said. "Just a feeling." She tilted her head. "Feelings are data," she answered. "You don't have proof, and that's fine. Just notice." Anita has always had a way of making me feel less like a fool and more like a witness. So I noticed. I noticed how Declan started taking his phone into the bathroom and turning on music to cover the light percussion of his text replies. I noticed how he changed his passcode. I noticed that when my mother rang the bell, Declan materialized almost immediately, even if he'd been deep in CAD files seconds before. I noticed how they had an ease that wasn't new but had sharpened, like a melody you suddenly realize you've been hearing under the main song all along. 2 Wednesdays later, a migraine sent me home from work at 2 in the afternoon. The sunlight in our cul-de-sac was high and mean. I parked crooked, pressed my forehead to the steering wheel, and breathed until the world steadied. I was halfway to the front door when a car turned into the driveway. Declan's. I blinked, confused. He wasn't due back for hours. He cut the engine, stepped out, and then the passenger door opened. My mother unfolded from that seat like a secret trying to look ordinary. The world compressed into details: her red dress, the diamond studs, the strand of hair that escaped and clung to her lip until she tucked it back with 2 fingers. Declan closed his door first, then hers, a choreography that felt practiced. Time didn't stop. It stretched. The elastic pause before a glass hits the floor. "Sheena," my mother said brightly, voice pitched an octave too high. "What are you doing home?" "Migraine," I answered. My mouth worked around the word like it might break. I looked at Declan. "And you?" "Early client cancellation," he said easily, keys spinning in his hand. "Your mother was just—" He glanced at her, and the sentence found a different ending. "In the neighborhood." I looked at the driveway, at the empty curb. "Where's your car, Mom?" A beat, a blink. "I took a taxi," she said. "Felt like walking the last block. Good for the legs." She laughed. No one joined her. The perfume I'd been smelling for weeks seemed to swell in the heat, a floral wave that put pressure behind my eyes. Declan moved past me to the door, and it was incredible, really, how normal we all tried to be after that. Tea kettle, sofa cushions, my mother sitting with one ankle tucked elegantly behind the other, Declan asking whether the Morrison renderings looked better with warmer tones. I took 2 migraine pills and climbed the stairs. On the landing, halfway up, I paused and listened. Silence, then a laugh, hers. What do you do with doubt when it finally grows a face? Do you confront it in your foyer, demand receipts, demand an explanation that could soothe the ache? Or do you hide your wounded animal heart in the bathroom and press cold water to your temples and tell yourself you are a rational adult who will not explode her life over the timing of 2 car doors? I chose the bathroom. I stood at the sink and watched my face become a stranger's while water ran cool over my wrists. I could hear their voices floating up, comfortable, close, indistinct. The migraine pulsed behind my eyes like a warning. When I came back down, my mother was standing a breath too close to him. Her hand rested on his sleeve with the casual intimacy of shared history. It dropped when she saw me. "I should go," she announced, and the room exhaled. She hugged me, perfumed and soft. "Rest," she murmured. "Don't make anything of anything." After she left, I turned to Declan. "That was odd," I said. He stared at the front door a second longer than he needed to. "What was?" "The taxi," I said. "The timing." He looked at me then, face so carefully neutral that it might as well have been a mask. "Sheena, you're spiraling. Please don't start." The gentleness in his tone felt like a hand on my head, pushing me underwater. "I'm not starting," I answered a little too fast. "I'm noticing." "Notice less," he said with a smile that didn't touch his eyes, and walked into the kitchen. That night, in bed, I listened to him breathe like a man with no secrets at all. I stared at the ceiling until shapes formed out of nothing. Somewhere in the dark house, the clock in the hallway ticked with the arrogance of something certain it would always be believed. When I finally slept, I dreamed I was standing in our garden as snow fell in summer, covering our roses, making everything beautiful and wrong at the same time. When I woke, the perfume still lingered in the hallway. and the first hairline crack in my perfect life had widened just enough to show darkness beneath. The morning after that strange encounter, I woke to a house that smelled faintly of roses and coffee. Declan had already left for work, his side of the bed cool, the indentation of his pillow smoothed flat, as if he wanted to erase any trace that he'd slept beside me. The sunlight hit the dresser mirror and split into little shards across the wall. For a moment, I just sat there, listening to the silence. It was thick, too deliberate. I tried to tell myself everything was fine. People imagine things when they were tired or lonely. I showered, dressed, poured myself coffee, and then noticed something that shouldn't have been there. One of my mother's earrings, a small gold stud, sitting near the sink. She'd been wearing them yesterday. I picked it up, the metal still smelling faintly of her perfume. The logical explanation, she dropped it when she came to visit. The other explanation, the one crawling under my skin, wasn't something I was ready to name. That week I moved through my days like I was learning choreography from memory I didn't trust. Declan and I barely spoke. When we did, his words were efficient, managerial. He left early, came home late, and spent the hours in between glued to his phone. I caught myself timing the vibration pattern of his messages, like that rhythm could decode a secret. One night at dinner, I asked, "Who's keeping you so busy?" I tried to keep my voice light. He looked up, a flash of annoyance crossing his face. "Just clients." "Clients that make you smile?" He sighed, setting his fork down. "Can't I smile anymore? God, Sheena, you sound paranoid." That word again. Paranoid. He'd used it like an anesthetic, meant to numb the conversation before it even started. Later that evening, I walked into the bedroom and stopped. His phone was face down on the nightstand, plugged in. He was in the shower. I touched it. Locked. The passcode didn't work. He'd changed it. A sharp pulse went through my chest. I told myself it was fine. People change passwords all the time. But when I looked up, I caught my own reflection in the mirror, pale and unsure, like I was already losing the argument. My mother's visits continued. Twice a week became 3 times. Sometimes she arrived when I wasn't home and left little notes on the kitchen counter. Stopped by. Love you. Sometimes I'd find 2 empty coffee cups in the sink. One Friday, I came home early again, pretending I'd forgotten a file at work. The living room was empty. Declan's car wasn't in the driveway, but the faint sound of laughter came from upstairs. My mother's voice, warm and melodic. I froze. For one suspended second, everything inside me turned to glass. Then I moved, quietly, barefoot up the stairs. The bedroom door was half closed. "Declan, stop! She won't! She trusts us!" The rest was a whisper I couldn't make out. The sound of movement, of fabric, of breathing. I stepped back, heart pounding so hard I thought they might hear it. Downstairs again, I forced my shaking hands to pick up my keys, walk out the front door, drive until the road blurred. I ended up parked outside Anita's apartment, unable to get out of the car. She came running when she saw my face. "What happened?" she asked, pulling me inside. And I told her, not everything, not yet, but enough. "I think they're—" The words sleeping together got stuck in my throat. Anita's expression shifted from disbelief to fury. "Your mother? You're sure?" "I'm not sure of anything," I said. "That's the problem. I don't trust what I see." She gripped my hand. "Then get proof. Don't confront them until you have it. You deserve to know the truth, not just feel it." That night I went home to an empty house. Declan texted, "Working late." My mother called an hour later. "Sweetheart, just wanted to say hi." Her voice was calm, cheerful, almost too casual. I hung up and sat in the dark, feeling like the floor beneath me was no longer solid. The next morning, I started keeping track of everything. I noted when Declan left for work, when he came home, when my mother called or visited. I drew lines on a calendar. Patterns began to form, quiet and damning. Every time Declan had late meetings, Victoria was unavailable. Every time she said she had book club, Declan was unreachable. 2 weeks later, I walked into our bedroom and stopped cold. The scent of my mother's perfume hung in the air again, stronger this time, unmistakable. I hadn't seen her that day. I crossed to the bed and lifted a pillow. There, against the white linen, was a smear of red lipstick, her shade, Ruby Royale. My knees went weak. I sat down, holding the pillow in both hands like a crime scene photograph. When Declan came home that night, I was still sitting there. "What are you doing?" he asked, pretending surprise. "Whose lipstick is this?" I asked. He blinked, then shrugged. "Maybe yours." "It's not my color." "Then maybe the cleaner's. I don't know." "We don't have a cleaner." "Sheena," he said, voice lowering, "you're losing it. You need to stop imagining things." I stood shaking. "Tell me the truth." "There's nothing to tell." His calm was terrifying. He moved around me like someone tidying a room after a small spill, while I stood there drowning in it. He left the bedroom without another word. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at the glow of the screen until the sky outside turned gray. Every part of me wanted to believe this was fixable, that there was an explanation I hadn't found yet. But there's a moment in every betrayal when the truth becomes heavier than denial, and that moment arrived with the sunrise. On Sunday, I called my mother. "Can we have lunch?" I asked. "Of course, darling," she said sweetly. "Everything okay?" "Fine. I just miss you." We met at her favorite cafe downtown. She wore that same red lipstick, the same diamond studs. "You look tired," she said, stirring her tea. "I haven't been sleeping much." "You need rest, love. Marriage can be exhausting sometimes." I looked at her then, really looked. "You'd know about that." Her spoon paused mid-stir. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said. "Just talking." She smiled, too slow, too deliberate, and I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Fear? Guilt? Or maybe irritation that I was finally paying attention. When I got home, Declan was in the living room, phone in hand. He looked up and forced a smile. "Everything okay?" "Perfect," I said, and went upstairs. I spent the evening scrolling through his social media, his emails, his calendar, searching for holes in the story. There were plenty. Appointments that didn't exist, meetings that ended hours earlier than he claimed. I realized that the life I thought I was living had run parallel to another one, hidden and overlapping, until now the two were colliding. At midnight, I texted Anita. "You were right. I'm getting proof." She replied, "Be careful. Don't confront them yet. Just know exactly what you're dealing with." I looked at Declan's sleeping form beside me, his breathing deep and even, and wondered if he'd ever loved me at all, or if love had just been the camouflage he wore while he waited for the right moment to strike. I didn't have the answer yet, but I would. 3 nights later, fate handed me the proof I had been begging for. Declan was in the shower, humming off key, steam curling beneath the bathroom door. His phone sat on the counter beside the sink, screen still glowing, unlocked. For the first time in months, unlocked. I don't remember deciding to pick it up. My hands acted before my mind caught up. I tapped open the Messages app. There were the usual names, coworkers, his brother, his gym partner, but one contact stopped me cold. V. Just a single letter. My chest tightened. V. There it was again, that perfume of dread I'd been breathing for weeks. I opened the thread. The first thing I saw were hearts. Not emojis you send to clients. These were private, pulsing declarations. V. I can still feel you. Declan. Can't stop thinking about you. You make me feel alive again. Scroll, scroll. Lines of affection, memory, coded language. Then the sentence that detonated the world I'd been clinging to. V. What about Sheena? Declan. She doesn't need to know yet. We have to be smart. My vision tunneled. The phone blurred in my hands. I kept reading. V. I hate sneaking around. I want to be with you properly. Declan. Soon. Once we handle the trust fund. Trust fund? My father's voice echoed in memory. His careful planning. The account he'd created after his death. It's your safety net, honey. Don't ever let anyone touch it. The text continued. V. Are you sure she'll sign? Declan. She trusts me. She'll sign anything. V. And after? Declan. After, we'll have everything we need. Spain, just like you wanted. Spain. My knees went weak. I scrolled further, desperate and horrified. And then the sentence that broke me entirely. V. I feel guilty sometimes. She's my daughter. Declan. Don't. She'll get over it. I dropped the phone. It clattered on the tile. Inside the bathroom, the water stopped running. My body moved automatically, picking the phone back up, scrolling for more. I needed every word, every nail to seal this coffin of lies. My heartbeat roared in my ears as I read the rest. They were planning to drain my inheritance, run away together, start a new life built on everything they'd stolen. from me. The door opened. Declan stepped out in a towel, rubbing his hair. When his eyes met mine, the color drained from his face. "Sheena," he said slowly, "what are you doing with my phone?" I didn't answer. My voice had vanished somewhere inside my chest. I held up the screen. "You're sleeping with my mother." He froze, every muscle locking. "How much did you read?" "Enough," I said, my throat raw. A pause, then, unbelievably, he laughed. Not nervously, mockingly. "Well, guess the cat's out of the bag." "That's all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say, that I'm sorry?" He pulled on his clothes, movements sharp and indifferent. "You were never supposed to find out this way." "This way? There's no right way to find out your husband is sleeping with your mother." He buttoned his shirt, not meeting my eyes. "Victoria and I didn't plan it. It just happened." "Stop saying her name," I snapped. "Why? You'll have to get used to it. She's the one I'm with now." My stomach twisted. "You're destroying everything." "No," he said, looking at me for the first time with something like pity. "We're freeing ourselves. You're not happy, Sheena. You haven't been for years. You just pretend. And your father's money, well, it's sitting there doing nothing. We could actually live." I stared at him, speechless. "You mean steal? You and my mother planning to rob me and run away?" He exhaled, as if tired of the conversation. "She deserves that money more than you do. She was your father's wife, not you. He left her crumbs and gave you the feast." I was shaking. "You married me for that money." "At first, maybe, but I tried, Sheena. I really did." His tone softened briefly, then hardened again. "You just make everything heavy. Victoria, she's light. She makes me feel alive." A sound escaped me, something between a laugh and a sob. "She's 25 years older than me. Age doesn't matter when two people understand each other." I stared at the floor because looking at him hurt too much. "You're a monster." He adjusted his cufflinks. "No, just practical." Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen, smirked, and answered on speaker. "Oh, Declan," my mother's voice cooed. "Did you tell her?" My stomach lurched. "Mom?" There was a pause. Then her tone turned falsely gentle. "Sweetheart, I know this must be confusing." "Confusing?" I could barely breathe. "You're sleeping with my husband." "Sheena, listen," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "I never meant for you to find out like this. But Declan and I, we have something real. You and he were drifting apart. Everyone could see it. This just happened." "Stop calling it love," I whispered. "It's betrayal." "It's truth," she said. "And you'll see that someday." "You're my mother." "Yes," she said, almost softly. "And because I'm your mother, I want what's best for both of us. If you cooperate, we can all move forward. Sign the divorce papers quietly. Transfer the trust fund. We'll help you start over." I laughed, a sound that didn't feel human. "You want me to fund your fairy tale?" "It's not like that," she said quickly. "We just need a little to get settled. You have so much, and we deserve a chance to be happy." "Deserve? You deserve nothing." Her voice cooled. "Be careful, Sheena. You have more to lose than we do. Declan has access to your accounts. He knows everything. Don't make us your enemy." "Too late," I said, and hung up. The silence afterward was deafening. Declan stood there watching me, towel of calm indifference still wrapped around his expression. "You'll regret this," he said. I turned and left the room without replying. Down the hallway, the walls seemed to close in. Every photograph, every smiling moment with them felt like a weapon pointed at me. That night I didn't cry. The grief was too big for tears. I just sat in the dark, numb, listening to the echo of their voices replay in my head until it became static. By dawn, I'd made my decision. If they wanted a war, I'd give them one, but not the kind they expected. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd break. They were wrong. I was going to make them pay. Quietly, precisely, completely. And the first step would be to make them believe they'd already won. For 3 days after I read their messages, the house felt like a body that had lost its left side, unbalanced, awkward, limping along rituals that used to make sense. I floated through it on autopilot, answer email, make coffee, stare at the wall. Anita sat with me until I could string sentences together. "You're not alone," she said, but those words were a bandage on a deep cut. I needed something that could cut back. Grief sharpened into a cold, clear edge. I didn't want to explode and make enemies. I wanted to outmaneuver them. If Declan and my mother thought a marriage and a trust fund were enough to buy freedom, they hadn't accounted for the part of me that could still think in spreadsheets and contracts and legal footnotes. My father had taught me to read the fine print. If anyone had tried to take what he'd left me, they'd find the margins were full of traps. Then fight, Anita said one evening, slamming her hand on my kitchen counter with a little too much force. Her knuckles were white. She'd called in favors, booked appointments, and brought me a war plan wrapped in pragmatic fury. You're not some helpless victim in a Hallmark movie, Sheena. You have resources. Use them. And don't... She paused, looking at me with a softness that made my throat sting. Don't do anything without someone who knows what they're doing. So I started with money. I called Harrison Pierce, the financial advisor my father had trusted, the man who'd once explained trust to me as if he were describing a shield. Harrison didn't blink when I told him the truth. He'd always been capable of measuring panic and turning it into protocol. You did exactly what you should have done, he said without explanation, which was comforting. We'll secure your assets, quietly. They'll never know until it's too late to do anything. We met that afternoon in a windowless conference room on the 12th floor. Harrison unfolded a plan that felt surgical. We moved funds into nested trusts, shadow accounts, and shell entities with trustees I trusted implicitly. He set up alerts and multi-layer authentication that would make any unauthorized transfer look like a dead end. Your father left protections for a reason, he said. We're activating them. He didn't call it revenge. He called it prudence. Parallel to money, I began building a second kind of armor: information. I hired Roger Castillo, a private investigator Anita recommended, lean, taciturn, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Roger arrived with a leather folder thick with precedent. I'll find everything, he said simply. Photos, receipts, calendars. If they touched it, I can track it. Roger's work was methodical and clinical. He photographed receipts from hotel rooms, traced credit card charges routed through shell corporations, and pulled phone backups. He found transactions that made no sense. Our joint card paying for dinners in neighborhoods they pretended never to visit, hotel bookings that coincided with Declan's mysterious client dinners, and emails that used euphemisms to hide real intents. He even found correspondence between my mother and a man named Warren Blackstone, a financial advisor with a reputation for creative accounting on the wrong side of legality. When people are planning to disappear, Roger told me, they don't usually do it with small gestures. He slid across a shot of a property registry, a whitewashed villa in Spain purchased through a front company. The deposit was substantial. If you're looking to stop them from leaving with money, we need leverage, he said. And leverage is proof. I watched Roger work and felt something like the first honest breath after a long illness. There was a rhythm to it: collect, assemble, wait. It calmed the part of me that wanted to yell, break things, or knock on doors and scream for justice. Instead, I built a dossier. Receipts, photos, email chains, timestamps. Everything labeled, cross-referenced, indelible. When you're the one who's been hurt, the temptation is always to act, rashly, emotionally. I chose to be invisible, patient, and thorough. Between Roger's discoveries and Harrison's maneuvers, I constructed a trap that was elegant in its cruelty. I pretended to comply. I signed papers with a face like porcelain. I agreed to give them what they thought they wanted. It was theater. I held my smile like a secret weapon. They needed to see the act to believe the win. Greed is predictable like that. It follows a map. There were nights I woke up sweating, convinced they'd discovered the truth. Declan texted like someone possessed. Need to talk. We must move fast. But the messages bounced off the fortress Harrison had built. My mother left polite voicemails about brunch and grandchildren, each one a needle that pricked, then withdrew. The contrast between their loud joy and my calm preparation was delicious in a way that made me feel guilty and sharp at the same time. I visited my father's grave on a stormy afternoon. Rain spattered my coat and the cemetery smelled like wet earth and something older. I told him, out loud, what I was doing. I'm sorry, Dad, I said. I'm going to make sure they don't take what you protected. The words felt less like confession and more like a promise I carved into the stone. Back at my apartment, I'd lay out the evidence on my dining table as if arranging playing cards for a final trick. Photos, account ledgers, hotel confirmations, the string of texts I'd lifted from Declan's unlocked phone, each piece a link in their chain. Roger had even found a set of encrypted messages between Victoria and Warren Blackstone about setting up offshore accounts. When I read those, the betrayal took on a new hue. This wasn't just passion or poor judgment. It was premeditated and precise. Every small victory came with its own private celebration. Harrison confirmed that the new structures were in place. Roger delivered a 3-inch binder labeled, in plain font, Evidence. Anita sent a bottle of cheap champagne and cried when she hugged me, her tears hot and frantic. "Now do it," she whispered. "Now they'll know what it's like." I admit to feeling something feral on the morning I realized the plan was working. It didn't feel like triumph puffed up on vengeance. It felt instead like reclaiming a body that had been taken over. The anger that had felt ragged and raw was now tempered into something useful, a blueprint. I didn't want their suffering for the sake of cruelty. I wanted the scales to be even. The most important part of my strategy, though, was something I hadn't planned in a spreadsheet or hired a lawyer to calculate. It was theater, convincing them of a victory they could not resist. Declan needed to feel the taste of success between his teeth. Victoria needed the sensual intoxication of winning back what she'd always wanted. Greed required validation. I would give them validation, and then withdraw the table they'd put their feet on. 3 weeks into the operation, I sat at my kitchen table with a single real smile in weeks. It was small and private, the thin curve of a mouth that had been straight for too long. I called Anita and whispered, "They think they've won." She laughed, a sharp sound that tasted like relief. "Good," she said. "Let them." That night I made myself a cup of tea and watched the city lights. I imagined Declan checking his accounts at dawn and feeling the first prickle of shock. I imagined my mother, in some salon chair across town, celebrating with a friend, unaware that the villa they'd planned to sleep in would soon be untouchable, seized, tangled in legal nets. I imagined their faces when the dossier hit their employers' desks and the social calls stopped. They'd spent months building a life they thought would disappear with me. They had no idea I was the one cutting the thread, and the thought, impossibly calm, terrifyingly certain, settled into my chest. When this is over, I will not be empty. I will be whole. I slept well that night for the first time in months. My dreams were not of violence, but of small things. A book I loved left open on the table, sunlight streaming across my new kitchen, the window cracked to let in spring air. The world wasn't fixed, but I'd found a way to move through it with intention. The next morning, I made a call I'd been putting off, signed papers that looked like surrender but were the last act of my trap. They thought their smiles had won. The morning I decided to hand them their own rope, the sky was a blank sheet, gray, uncommitted, waiting for someone to write on it. I dressed deliberately, neutral blouse, steady hands, calm breath. The performance had to be flawless. Declan came over at noon with the papers, divorce agreement, trust fund transfer, financial authorizations. He looked casual, confident, almost cheerful, like a man visiting a former colleague instead of his wife. I watched him from the kitchen window as he parked, humming along to music I couldn't hear. "Sheena," he said when I opened the door, "you look good." "Do I?" My smile barely moved. "Let's get this over with." He set the folders on the table, each labeled neatly. "The lawyers drafted everything. It's straightforward." "I'll sign," I said. "Just give me a few days to process it all." He studied me. "No fight?" "What's the point? You win." He nodded, pleased, and left. I stood at the window long after his car disappeared. It wasn't defeat, it was camouflage. That night I met Harrison at his office after hours. The glass towers outside reflected a stormy sunset. "It's time," I said. "I'll sign everything he gives me." He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "You're sure you want to go through with the performance?" "It's the only way they'll fall for it." He smiled faintly. "Then we proceed." Over the next few days, Harrison and Roger fine-tuned every thread of the plan. Roger monitored Declan's movements, hotel visits, meetings, phone calls to my mother. "They're confident," he reported, "talking about Spain again. They even picked out furniture for the villa. They have no idea what's coming." The following week, Declan returned with Victoria. My mother walked into my house as if she'd never betrayed me, hair perfectly blown out, wearing a pale pink suit that smelled faintly of the perfume that had haunted my nightmares. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice syrupy, "I'm so glad you've decided to be reasonable." Reasonable. The word burned. I motioned to the documents. "Let's sign." Her smile faltered for half a second, maybe because she'd expected resistance. But I sat at the dining table, pen poised, and signed where they told me to. Divorce, transfer, acknowledgement. I could feel Declan's eyes on me, measuring my compliance. He mistook my silence for surrender. Thank you, he said, almost tenderly. You're doing the right thing. I know. We went to the bank that afternoon to finalize the transfer. The manager, Mr. O'Brien, greeted us warmly. Big day, Mrs. Whitmore. It's Ms. Ravenscroft now, I corrected quietly. Declan and Victoria shared a look, suppressing a smirk. I almost admired their arrogance. It made them predictable. Inside the manager's office, I signed the final authorization. Harrison's safeguards were already in place. The accounts they believed were real didn't exist. The paperwork they signed linked to dummy structures that would expose their fraud the moment they tried to touch a cent. The funds will clear within 24 hours, O'Brien said, handing us receipts. Wonderful, my mother said brightly. It's such a relief to close this chapter. I smiled back, meeting her eyes. Yes, closure. Outside the bank, the sun was merciless. Victoria looped her arm through Declan's, glowing. Let's celebrate tonight, she said. Champagne at the harbor. They walked away hand in hand. I watched them go, my expression serene. Inside, something cold and electric flickered. Satisfaction's first spark. That evening, Roger and Harrison met me at my apartment. The blinds were drawn, my dining table littered with documents and coffee cups. It's done, I said. They believe it's over. Harrison checked his laptop. The fake transfer went through on schedule. Their joint account now holds exactly $0. The moment they try to access anything, the system flags it as attempted fraud. Roger opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. And I've prepared the rest. The package for their employers, the evidence file, the photographs, text transcripts, and financial records, all time-stamped. They won't just lose the money. They'll lose everything they've built to justify the theft. I stared at the folder, feeling both vindicated and hollow. How long until it all hits? Tomorrow morning, Roger said. I've timed the deliveries. I nodded. Good. Anita arrived later that night with takeout and cheap red wine. She sat on my couch, studying me. You should feel something, she said. Relief, anger, anything. I feel quiet, I said. Like the noise finally stopped. Quiet's good, she said softly. Quiet means control. The next morning, Harrison called first. The first domino fell, he said. Declan's access credentials were flagged at 9:12 a.m. They tried to move funds. The system froze them out. At 9:47, Roger texted, Property in Spain seized. Warren Blackstone under investigation. They're going to panic. By noon, everything was moving. Declan called, but I let it ring. He left a voicemail, voice strained and incredulous. Sheena, what did you do? The bank says there's an issue with the account. The funds aren't there. This can't be right. Call me back. By 2 p.m., my mother called too. Darling, she said, struggling to stay calm. The bank's being ridiculous. Declan's furious. Can you check with your advisor? Maybe there was a mistake. I listened twice, then deleted the message. At 3 a.m., Roger called again. They've booked emergency meetings with their lawyers. They think it's a clerical error. By the time they realize it's not, their reputations will already be collapsing. The plan was running perfectly, like clockwork designed by vengeance itself. Still, part of me felt weightless, unreal. After so many nights drowning in helplessness, standing on solid ground felt foreign. I walked to the window and watched the city stretch out beneath me. The world kept turning, cars honking, people hurrying, life indifferent to my private war. I thought of my father again, the way he'd smile over breakfast and tell me that the key to surviving betrayal was patience. Never strike too soon, he'd said once. Wait until they think they've already won. Now I understood. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the skyline, Roger called one last time. His voice was calm, but almost reverent. It's done. They have nothing. Declan's firm's internal ethics committee just received the file. The country club board got theirs too. By tomorrow, every circle they move in will know. Good, I said quietly. What now? Roger asked. Now, I said, we wait for the wedding. Because they hadn't canceled it. Not yet. In their arrogance, they decided to move forward with the ceremony, my mother marrying my husband, on the ashes of what they believed was an $8 million triumph. They'd made it public, lavish, inviting everyone they knew. They thought they were walking toward paradise, but I knew better. They were walking into their own execution, and I would be there to watch. The morning of their wedding dawned with the kind of cruel beauty that made everything look clean. The air was sharp, the sky painfully blue, as if the world wanted to bleach away the filth of what was about to happen. I woke before sunrise, my stomach a knot of quiet rage and perfect calm. For months I had lived like a ghost inside my own life, but that morning I felt more alive than I had in years. I stood in front of the mirror and studied the reflection looking back at me. I chose a black dress, simple, elegant, deliberate. Not mourning, not celebration. Something in between, the color of endings. My hair fell in soft waves over my shoulders. No jewelry, no perfume. Just me, stripped down to truth. Anita came to pick me up. When she saw the dress, she raised an eyebrow. Funeral attire? I smiled faintly. Exactly. The Rosewood Estate was an hour outside the city, a sprawling venue wrapped in manicured gardens and trimmed hedges. When we arrived, the parking lot was already crowded with luxury cars and polished guests in pastels and pearls. I could almost laugh at the absurdity. Two people drenched in deceit, throwing themselves a fairy tale. The ceremony was set up on the back lawn. Rows of white chairs faced a floral arch, dripping in cream roses. A string quartet played something delicate and expensive. The guests murmured politely, unaware, or perhaps unwilling to consider, the grotesque irony of it all. I sat in the last row. The breeze tugged at the hem of my dress. A few people glanced back, recognizing me. The abandoned wife, the discarded daughter. I kept my face blank, unreadable. Then the music shifted. The officiant walked out, smiling his practiced smile. Please rise for the bride. Declan emerged first, flanked by his best man. His tuxedo was perfect, his confidence a mask I'd seen 100 times. He looked up, scanning the crowd, and when his eyes found mine, he froze for a fraction of a second. Then he smiled, smug, certain, victorious. He thought my presence meant forgiveness. He had no idea it meant witness. And then she appeared, my mother, Victoria Ravenscroft, 52, dressed in a gown of blinding white. Not ivory, not cream. White, as if purity could be painted over corruption. Her veil shimmered, her diamonds glowed, her smile could have cut glass. She walked slowly down the aisle, every step measured, practiced. The crowd gasped softly at her beauty. I felt nothing but disgust. As she passed my row, her eyes met mine. For a moment, time thinned. She smiled. Not a mother's smile, not apology, triumph. It said, I won. I smiled back. A small, secret smile that said, you just don't know it yet. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke about love, about second chances, about two souls finding each other against all odds. His voice was calm, reverent, obscene. I wanted to laugh. The vows came next. Declan took her hands, looking into her eyes with the sincerity of a man reciting lines he'd rehearsed. Victoria, when I met you, I didn't know what it meant to truly live. You taught me that love isn't about age or circumstance. It's about connection. The audience sighed. My stomach turned. My mother's turn. Declan, you've shown me that it's never too late to follow your heart. You remind me that happiness is not a gift. It's a choice. A choice. That word. She had chosen this. Chosen him. Chosen greed. Chosen betrayal. And still expected applause. When the officiant asked, if anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace, the air seemed to still. For a heartbeat, every head turned, just slightly, toward me. I didn't move. I didn't need to. Then, by the power vested in me, the officiant said, smiling, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. They kissed. Long, theatrical, indulgent. The crowd erupted into applause. I watched quietly, the smile on my lips sharper than a blade. They walked back down the aisle, hand in hand. When they passed my row, Victoria squeezed my hand briefly, leaning down to whisper, Thank you for coming, sweetheart. It means everything. It will, I whispered back. The reception was held inside the estate's grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers glimmered above tables draped in gold linens. Champagne flowed, laughter echoed, and lies sparkled brighter than the diamonds on my mother's wrist. I took a seat near the back, observing. Declan moved through the crowd like a man newly crowned. Victoria glowed beside him, greeting guests, accepting compliments about how brave, how radiant, how inspiring she was. The speeches began. The best man joked about finding love in unexpected places. My mother's friend toasted her for following her heart despite judgment. The hypocrisy was suffocating. Then my mother stood for her own speech. I want to thank everyone for being here today, she began, voice soft and melodious. I know this union may surprise some, but love doesn't follow rules. Declan and I found something real, something that transcends convention. It's never too late to begin again. She lifted her glass. To new beginnings. The crowd echoed her words. I didn't drink. When she sat, Declan kissed her cheek. They looked like the picture of bliss. That was my cue. I rose, smoothing my dress, and walked toward them. Could I speak to you both? They turned, smiling politely for appearances. Of course, darling, my mother said. What's wrong? Nothing, I said, voice calm. I just wanted to say congratulations. Declan's smile flickered, unsure. Really? Of course. You both got exactly what you wanted. Sheena, my mother began, cautious. Let's not do this here. Oh, but we should. Because I want you to know something before your little honeymoon begins. I leaned closer. The money you think you have, the $8 million in your joint account, it doesn't exist. Their faces froze. What are you talking about? Victoria's voice dropped. The account you transferred from closed 2 months ago. The documents you signed? Worthless. The money's gone. Declan's face went pale. You can't do that. I already did. And the villa in Spain, I added. It's being seized as we speak. Your financial advisor, Warren Blackstone, was arrested for fraud. Congratulations. You bought property in the middle of an investigation. My mother grabbed my wrist. What have you done? What you taught me to do, I said, meeting her eyes. Protect myself. Her grip tightened. You'll regret this. No, I whispered. You will. Declan tried to recover his composure, but his voice trembled. You're bluffing. Check your accounts, I said. Go ahead. He pulled out his phone, swiping frantically. I watched the color drain from his face. There's nothing. That's impossible, my mother hissed. Oh, it's possible. You made it easy. You gave me every signature I needed. I stepped back, smiling just enough for the nearby guests to think it was a friendly conversation. By the way, I continued softly, tomorrow morning, everyone you know will receive a lovely package. Photos, texts, bank statements. Every lie you've told, every plan you made to steal from me. Your firm, your country club, your friends, they'll all see the truth. Victoria's eyes widened. You vindictive little... I learned from the best, I said sweetly. I straightened my dress, turned toward the door. Enjoy your marriage, I said over my shoulder. I hope you love each other enough to survive poverty. Behind me, the first murmurs began. Confusion, tension, the whisper of gossip shifting through the room like wind through dry leaves. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. As I reached the exit, I heard Declan's voice rise, sharp and desperate. Victoria, what the hell did you promise him? Then her voice, shrill, breaking. You said it was safe. Their perfect day was collapsing behind me, their applause turning to chaos. Outside, the sky had turned a deeper blue, the first stars peeking through. I inhaled, the air crisp and free. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Justice didn't always arrive in courtrooms or headlines. Sometimes it wore a black dress, sat in the last row, and smiled when the guilty said, I do. The morning after their wedding, my phone started buzzing before sunrise. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I lay there, watching pale light creep across my bedroom ceiling, and listened as call after call went to voicemail. Declan. Then my mother. Then Declan again. The predators had realized the trap had teeth. At 9 o'clock a.m., a text arrived from Harrison. It's begun. By 9:30, Declan's firm had frozen his accounts pending an ethics investigation. At 10 home mic, the country club board emailed my mother about an urgent disciplinary matter. At 11:15, Roger called, his tone oddly cheerful. The packages landed, he said. Every contact, every colleague, every friend, delivered. By noon, the gossip machine was in full swing. My inbox filled with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Is it true? I can't believe your mother did that. Are you okay? I deleted everyone without replying. By 2 in the afternoon, Declan's number appeared again on my screen. I let it ring. He left a voicemail, voice shaking, somewhere between pleading and panic. Sheena, please. There has been a mistake. The bank says the transfer never cleared. The firms called me in. They think I used company funds for personal expenses. Just tell me what you did. We can fix this. He sounded terrified. It should have satisfied me. It didn't. The next day, Victoria tried. Her message was short, clipped, still pretending authority. Sweetheart, call me. The media's contacting me. You have no idea what kind of damage you're doing. Damage. That word again. As if what she'd done wasn't damage of its own. Roger sent me updates in hourly bursts, screenshots of headlines, social media chatter, the first shaky photos of Declan leaving his office with a cardboard box. The headline read, "Architect fired amid scandal with former client's family." His smile in the photograph was gone. By Wednesday, my mother's downfall followed. The country club board voted unanimously to terminate her membership. Her so-called friends stopped answering her calls. The charity committee she chaired issued a formal statement distancing itself from her personal affairs. The mask had fallen. Anita came over that night with wine, but I barely touched it. "You won," she said softly. "It doesn't feel like winning." "It's not supposed to," she replied. "It's supposed to balance the scale." Thursday afternoon, Roger called again. "Spanish authorities seized the villa. Warren Blackstone's in custody. Your mother and Declan are named in the investigation." I stared at the city skyline through my window. "How much did they lose?" "Everything," he said, "and they still owe." By the weekend, their social world had collapsed completely. Friends unfriended, invitations revoked, whispers spreading faster than truth. I'd spent months being the subject of pity. Now, they were the spectacle. Sunday morning, Declan showed up at my doorstep. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. His suit was wrinkled, hair unkempt, eyes ringed with exhaustion. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just stood there, holding his car keys like they were the only thing he hadn't lost yet. "5 minutes," he said hoarsely. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "You have 3. He ran a hand through his hair. "I know you hate me. I deserve it. But please, listen. We're broke. Victoria's losing it. She blames me for everything. We can't access anything. We can't even pay rent. I need help." "Help?" I echoed. "You stole from me." "We tried," he admitted, voice breaking. "It wasn't supposed to go this way. I thought she knew what she was doing. She said it was legal, that your father owed her." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't bring my father into this. He trusted you both. He would have spat on the ground before giving his blessing to what you did." He flinched. "You think I don't know that? You think I haven't been punishing myself every day since?" I studied him. The hollow eyes, the twitch in his jaw, the tremor in his voice. Once, I might have pitied him. Once, I might have believed there was still a trace of the man I'd loved buried under his greed. But pity is the first step back into captivity, and I was done being caged. "You made your choice," I said quietly. "You wanted freedom. You got it. Now live with it." He took a step forward. "Sheena, please. She's your mother." "She stopped being my mother when she chose you." He looked away, the word landing harder than he expected. "So that's it?" "That's it." I went inside and closed the door. Through the window, I watched him stand there for a long moment before he walked away, shoulders slumped, keys dangling uselessly in his hand. 3 weeks later, I heard they'd separated. Officially, they filed for divorce, each blaming the other for fraud and emotional distress. It made the local gossip columns for a day, then disappeared like all scandals do when fresher meat arrives. When Anita read the article aloud, I just nodded. "They'll destroy each other now," I said. "I don't have to lift another finger." And they did. Declan moved out of their apartment, sold his car, started freelancing in cheap architectural gigs that barely paid rent. Victoria tried to sue him for theft, but the court filings turned into another circus, public records full of venom. Every headline cut another thread of their reputations. By the time spring rolled around, they were ghosts. Still, part of me wondered whether vengeance ever truly ends. Because when the dust settled and I stood in the quiet of my new home, I realized revenge hadn't made me lighter. It had made me clearer. I wasn't the woman who'd begged for love anymore. I was the woman who learned to stand still while everything false burned away. That night, I deleted every voicemail they'd ever left, every picture, every memory that still hummed with poison. I didn't forgive, I didn't forget, but I was finally free. A year passed. Seasons blurred and rebuilt themselves like my life. The world outside kept moving, faster than I expected, but for the first time in a long while, I didn't need to chase it. I woke when I wanted. I worked with quiet joy. The ghosts had stopped whispering. I'd moved into a small house near the coast, a place with creaky floors, sea air, and no shared memories. Every piece of furniture had been chosen by me, for me. Every wall carried light instead of shadows. Some mornings, I'd stand at the window with a cup of coffee and think about how peace doesn't arrive in grand gestures. It comes in the sound of waves and silence that doesn't hurt. The publishing house promoted me to senior editor 6 months earlier. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. People at work respected me not for who I'd been attached to, but for what I built after everything collapsed. That mattered more than money ever could. I started seeing someone. His name was Leo. He was kind, honest, quiet. The first time we had dinner, he asked no questions about my past. He just listened. It took months before I told him the full story. The betrayal, the scheme, the wedding. He didn't flinch. He just said, "You survived them." We moved slowly. No promises, no illusions. Just small, careful steps toward something that might become love someday. One rainy afternoon, I heard Declan's name again. Harrison mentioned him in passing during a check-in call. "He's back in Ohio," he said. "Working construction with his brother. Seems to keep his head down." I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just distance, the kind that time builds like a wall. A month later, Roger sent a brief update about my mother. "Victoria's working part-time at a department store," he said. "She's living in a studio apartment uptown. I doubt she recognizes herself anymore." She'd tried reaching out once before. Letters returned unopened, calls unanswered. But one afternoon in early winter, she appeared at my workplace. My assistant's voice trembled when she buzzed me. "There's a woman here. Says she's your mother." I didn't want to see her, but curiosity is a cruel companion. I told my assistant to let her in. When Victoria walked into my office, I barely recognized her. The shimmer was gone. Her hair showed gray at the roots, her eyes ringed with sleeplessness. Even her posture, the proud, effortless grace she once carried, had collapsed. "Sheena," she said softly, "you look wonderful." "Thank you." I stayed seated. "What do you want?" "I just need to talk, 5 minutes." I nodded once. "You have 3. She clasped her hands. "I've lost everything. The house, the car, the friends. Declan's gone. I can't—" She swallowed. "I can't keep going like this. Please, I need help, a little money, a place to stay, anything." I studied her. "Do you remember when you said I had more than enough, that I wouldn't even notice what you took?" Her eyes filled with tears. I was wrong. "Yes," I said, "you were." "I know you hate me," she whispered, "but you're still my daughter." "No," I said evenly. "You stopped being my mother the day you chose him." She flinched, the words hitting harder than I expected. "Please, Sheena, I'm begging you. You won. You got your revenge. Don't let me starve." I looked at her, really looked. This woman had given birth to me, raised me, taught me how to survive, and she had used every bit of that teaching to destroy me. But what she hadn't realized was that her betrayal had forged something stronger in me than love ever did. Clarity. "You once told me Dad left you the house and me the money," I said. "Do you know why?" "Because he loved you more," she murmured. "No," I said quietly, "because he knew you." Her face crumpled. "He warned me once, said you'd always love yourself first. I didn't want to believe him. I do now." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'm sorry." "Maybe you are," I said, "but that doesn't make you safe." I stood, walked to the door, and held it open. "Goodbye, Victoria." She hesitated, shoulders shaking. "What am I supposed to do?" "The same thing you told me when you betrayed me," I said. "Figure it out." She left without another word. That night, I sat by my window as rain tapped softly against the glass. For a long time, I watched the water trace patterns on the pane. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel guilt, just stillness. People talk about forgiveness like it's a cure. It isn't. It's a door. You can open it when you're ready, or not at all. I didn't owe her that door. Over the next few months, I learned how to live in the quiet again. I read books late into the night. I took weekend trips with Leo. I laughed. The first time I caught myself laughing freely, it startled me. Joy felt foreign, then natural. Sometimes when I walked by the ocean, I thought about that day, the wedding, the roses, the applause. I thought about how I'd sat in the back row in black while they paraded in white, unaware that they were walking into their own ruin. It wasn't cruelty that had guided me. It was balance. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, patient as tide. People still ask if I've forgiven them. I tell them forgiveness isn't always the point. Survival is. Growth is. I built a life out of the ashes they left me. I found love that doesn't demand blindness. I built peace that doesn't depend on other people's ruin. Sometimes I wonder if Victoria ever thinks of me, if Declan ever regrets what he traded for greed. But wondering isn't longing, it's acknowledgement. The past exists, but it no longer owns me. Because here's what I learned in the wreckage. When someone tries to break you, They show you what you're made of. And I discovered that I was made of steel. The woman who once begged for truth now speaks it without shaking. The woman who doubted herself now trusts every instinct. The woman who once lived for approval now lives for peace. So when I say I'm grateful, I mean it. Grateful for the pain that woke me up. Grateful for the betrayal that built my backbone. Grateful for the fire that forged me new. The day they betrayed me, they lost. They just didn't know it yet. And watching them realize it, slowly, painfully, inevitably, was the sweetest justice of all. My name is Sheena Ravenscroft. This is my story, and I am still here, still standing, still free.